changing the world, baby. Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Bald Avenger Show. I am Jason Sisneros, also known as the Bald Avenger, the tattooed guru, the purveyor of all things common sense, and a legend. Tamara, this one's for you, in my own mind, okay? So I'm a legend, also known as the King of the Misfit Nation. Welcome to another episode. We are going to have a great evening this evening. Those of you that remember the show that sort of broke the internet with Seth Keshel, he's back this evening. And he's also known as the America's Captain. I don't know if he calls himself that, or it's just me and him in private that call each other that, but he's America's Captain. You guys can remember him from the last show. Also, we've got Tamara Colbert. I always want to say Colbert.
It's tricky, I know.
It is tricky. I want to French it up. I want to act like I know a thing or two. But Tamara's with us. And, you know, one of the things that she went ahead and rubbed in my face right as we were getting ready for the show was the fact that she's the 12th granddaughter of Captain Standish. And if you don't know what that means, look it up, Google it, but that's super powerful to me. And lastly, but not leastly, we have James Tesauro, and he is a gentleman who served in the military for this country for over 10 years and was a Black Hawk pilot. I'm going to let them introduce themselves and talk a little bit about more what they do. And then we're going to get right into it tonight. Tonight's episode is going to be focused around those of us that felt a little bit, what's the word I should use tonight, Seth? Screwed, okay? During the election and during all of the things that we saw happen. And I've got three people here that are very tight, very close to it, have their own opinions. And we're going to talk about not just complaining about the past and the things that have happened, but we're going to talk about the future and what we individually are doing, and then what we as a nation can do to come together and sort of get back into momentum. So I'll start with you, Tamara. Why don't you tell us a little bit more about yourself?
Ladies first. I like it.
First.
All right.
Thank you. I don't know if I'm a conservative anymore, if I'm just a patriot. But patriots.
Oh no, chivalry is not dead. I appreciate it. Thank you so much. So,
my pleasure.
What a kind introduction, and thank you for inviting me tonight. I'm so pleased to be here with such esteemed colleagues and other fine gentlemen. I appreciate that. What can I say? I am a 12th generation great granddaughter of Captain Miles Standish, and I love this country, and I have had the privilege of really getting involved, how can I say, since 2010, since we all woke up with the founding of Tea Party movements. I co-founded a Tea Party many years ago back in Pasadena, California. When I moved to Texas, we had over 20,000 people part of that. And I think what it really did in 2008, 2010 opened my eyes to the vulnerabilities that we have in America with not with our system, but with citizens. and the lack of education and the lack of encouragement and inspiration from leaders to our civic duty is so essential, and that is not taught in school anymore. And so coming off of working with the Convention of States Project as the leader in Texas and passing legislation successfully in 2017, which outside of childbirth and my marriage is probably one of my favorite accomplishments in my life. I co-founded Grassroots Gold with my co-founder, Paul Hodson. And Grassroots Gold is really wants to be the gold standard in activism. And that is our mission, to promote training, education, and inspiration and engagement among grassroots, average Americans, people that have never been engaged in politics and policy making before. And I've learned a lot. I guess I'm the street of hard knocks, understanding how to navigate a Capitol, how to work with legislators, and then doing some of the heavy lifting of what it really takes to pass legislation. And I'm encouraged because Benjamin Franklin said, we have a republic if you can keep it. Not Donald Trump, not Joe Biden, not George Washington, or anyone else. It's up to each one of us. That's the secret sauce. And so I love that. Thank you for inviting me tonight. I look forward to engaging all of y'all in that discussion.
Can't wait to hear more. Well, Mr. Seth Keshel, how about you, brother? Introduce yourself. Tell the people. They already know you because we broke the internet and got called all kinds of names after our last show. But, that's kind of life I live. How about you?
Jason, first off, thanks for having me back on, and thanks for getting the band back together and bigger and better this time. We didn't get it too bad. I think when you come out with so much factual information, so much stuff that you really can't even challenge, that you get these ad hominem attacks to an absolute minimum. There's gonna be people that are come out firing for any reason, but if you're on point, and you know your material and you basically put your cards on the table and force people to show, they've got a really hard time being nasty. And I think that, that's the thing that we can sort of lay aside labels today. You've mentioned you don't know if you're a conservative or you're a patriot. Well, I think the last few months have caused, since we had our last talk, have caused a lot of people to question their loyalties and their allegiances. But as for me, if you're picking this up on the first time, I actually have known Tamara for about 4 or 5 years. We worked together on the Convention of States project here in Texas. I was a district captain and a grassroots coordinator for House District 130, which is down in the southeast of the state near Houston. I live closer to DFW now. But we successfully passed that resolution in 2017. So I've known her for a while. I've known James for about 4 months since the issues with the election began. James helped run down a lot of the stuff. Can we go on? I guess if we're not talking, go on mute, maybe, James. There you go. We ran down a lot of issues up there in his neck of the woods up in Wisconsin, and I, went up there to help him campaign for mayor of Sheboygan, which he put up a good fight. Had some issues with split tickets there, but we've got a pretty good agenda for getting America First candidates on ballot everywhere, up and down the ticket. And I was an Army intelligence officer. I was a captain as well. And because I'm America's captain, I guess I outranked James, even though he did 10 years and I did 6. But my intelligence background, I'm a statistically minded guy, but I'm able to get those points across. I'm a big believer in new media, being able to engage people who are not really political types, to get involved and to care. And that's one thing as we go through this segment, you're going to see people are going to have no choice but to care here in the next 4 years. Of this administration. And that's something that's, it's going to bring a lot of pain, but it may be the only way forward. I had a fortunate break where I was privileged to work with General Flynn, Lynn Wood, Sidney Powell, and others in challenging the election results. We didn't get the results we wanted. Now, when we had our last talk, that was still up in the air. Lots of issues with the courts. That's not something that was good. That was something that the people needed to hear, needed to see in front of these courts. The courts needed to hear these. But I've very well connected in those regards, understanding what happened with the election, and also on the ground, thanks to people like Tamara, where we're going to go from here to get people involved if we're going to see any progress.
I can't wait to talk more about that. And by the way, it was interesting. I joke about the hate mail that we got, but it was overwhelmingly positive in so many ways. You know, especially when Sidney Powell decided that she was going to retweet it. I had just gotten off of Twitter, if you remember. So I went back on Twitter, and I had, you know, 100,000 followers or whatever it was that on Twitter, but I just got disgusted. I think a lot of people did, with what was going on, and I just bounced off. And then we do this show, and then she retweets it, and I'm like, man, that would have been helpful to know, right? But the responses and then
that's not too far off. That's not too far off of how I got my Twitter account. So when we had our show on December 18th, I still didn't have a Twitter account. Right. And I did an interview in Ohio with a guy named Doug Wade about 11 days after our interview, and General Flynn got hold of it. And he said, you know, I'm not going to put this out on Twitter unless you have a handle, you know, and I didn't really want to put that out there. And since, you know, I couldn't put on there like, you know, tall and sexy, you know, 84, and you know, and then have that go out, you know, like, cause it's gonna be like, well, that's Seth Keshel. So I just put my real name on there, and General Flynn tweets this thing out, and this is a couple days before he gets banned off of Twitter. And well, I went from 0 followers to 60,000 followers in about 2 days. And so now I have a Twitter account. So I didn't run away from Twitter, even though, you know, there's a lot of people with a reason to slam the door on it, because I don't need to yield the playing field. I kind of have my grudges against Parler, not because of the platform, but I think that it's an echo chamber. Right. So I like to be able to get other ideas out there, but that's how my Twitter account came to be. Now it's whittled down to 36,000 as they purged everybody. I'm not a 12th descendant grandchild of any famous American, but I am a 3rd generation Austro-Hungarian American. Anthony got off the boat in 1913, and we have a long line of Army officers in our past. So that's where we come from.
That's where you come from. Awesome. Great lineage. Great lineage. All right, James, I'm going to take you off of mute here, or you have to unmute yourself. Maybe. There you go. And just introduce yourself, my friend. Sheboygan, Jason, like you ran for mayor of Sheboygan. It's the most fun town to say, to me.
It is
anyway.
It is a fun town to say. We've got the world's greatest brats. If I sound kind of scratchy, I'm fighting off a little bit of a non-COVID virus. So I asked Seth earlier today, I was like, can I be myself? And he was like, yeah, I think so. And so, no, I, like you said already, just under 10 years, as a pilot. And the joke goes, if you ask a pilot, you know, what he did for a living, he'll tell you, you know, but, Seth and I, like you said, we met 4 months ago. And it was by the grace of God, really. It was by happenstance through a mutual good friend of both of ours. And the rest is kind of history. We became fast friends, have a ton in common. It's like charging a hill when you meet somebody that really, you know, clicks with you. And you know, I think what we did was we proved a lot of stuff to be true. And I could show you a stack 2.5 inches tall of signed affidavits and declarations from regular people just in this state of incidents. You know, and that's just Wisconsin. I could also tell you that there's tons of people in this state that would love just to know that there are people out there that are going to bat for them every single day. You know, just with their head down. And if there's a wall in front of us, we're either going to go around it either way, go over it, or dig away underneath it. Or if we have to, we're just going to put our heads down and run through it. And I think that's really where Seth and I connected. You know, I'm a firm believer. I've got a political science background. I've got a degree in that. Went to school. I'm originally from New England, which is like the epicenter of communism now in the United States, unfortunately. And, you know, we got to be really careful too. I was in the grocery store today, actually, and just a little bit of background about, I hope you're okay with me talking like this, because we use these like little words like triggered. Even the cashier was like, man, I had an incident. I don't know why she started talking to me, but she's like, man, I had an incident yesterday with a customer. They were just looking to be offended. And I said, it's like people are waking up these days looking for a reason to be offended. And, you know, I have no problem being that person to offend them if it has to do with facts, because the second you start talking about facts, they start slinging names at you. And that's how you know you've already won the argument. So, you know, what we have to do is we have to just continue on what we're doing. we have to have a clear and concise goal and a mission. And that's always been, the way I've thought about things. I've managed campaigns at the local level. I just ran one for me. Well, we were 3 for 3 with the campaigns that I either managed or worked very closely with when I was in Kansas after I got out of the Army. I was also that captain that couldn't keep his mouth shut while I was in the Army, and could have gotten in a lot of trouble just because the majority of my career was during president, not to be named, before the president who actually just won a second term. So, but anyway, I won't talk much longer. I don't have cool military background in my ancestry either, but I do have 2 grandfathers that have since passed, but they were both served in the Korean War, and very honorably as well. But my ancestry, they came over on boats. They did it the right way. They learned the American way of life, and they raised some really good people in our family. And I'd like to think that's where I come from. I also am a firm believer that America doesn't die this way. This isn't the way that this is going to go. And the reason why, if I could, real quick, just to finish up and then let you take over your own show again, our mindsets, I think, have to be united. I mean, one thing I'll give the left is that they're united, even though they're wrong. And we have to keep using trigger words like fighting for our freedom, fighting for our country, because they'll go to any great length to find, the ulterior motive or the ulterior meaning behind those words. He said fight. Oh man, I'm going to keep saying fight, because you know what? I'd rather die on my feet than live on my knees. That's who I am. And I'm just excited to be here, honestly. So whenever you let me talk, I'll gladly pipe in. So.
Well, that's why you're here, and just so you know, I should have given you the heads up at the beginning of the show. Anything goes here. I don't care how you speak, as long as it's from your core, as long as it's the truth. Again, they say there's different truths, but there's really only one truth. And the last thing that we want to do on my show is I'm not into censoring. Even if somebody says something that I disagree with, then great. Now we have an opportunity to go back and forth, and I have an opportunity to sharpen my argument, and you have an opportunity to sharpen your argument. But what we've been told is that if you come from a particular background, if you're a Democrat or a Republican, you're supposed to hate each other. And I have never, ever in my entire life prescribed to that fact, because I don't like being told what to do. Just like you said, when in the military, I don't like being told what to do. I'm going to make up my own mind. I have plenty of people that hate me that have never met me. And I have plenty of people that know me very well for a lot of years that love me. The people that hate me that have met me, they have all the right in the world to hate me, because they met me. We had a conversation, right? And they decided that there was something that they hated about me. And I love that kind of reality. So let's get the conversation going, because ultimately, I want every one of you to say what's on your mind, on your heart, because I know that you care deeply, all 3 of you, about this country, as do I. And you've done a lot of thinking, right? A lot of what I see happening out there is there's not a lot of thinking on the left and the right, but primarily from the left, there's like, okay, what is MSNBC telling me to think? What are they telling me to say? What are and I don't like that kind of militarism of our opinions. We have our own opinions. We have the ability to seek information independently and to come up with our own conclusions that may add to a different approach. So I want to start out with the word that you started out with, Tamara, called activism. And I want you to talk about that a little bit from your perspective. And then I want the fellows to chime in here. But talk about activism, because activism has taken on a couple of different meanings in the country these days, right? It's activism means that you have to, for instance, I'll use BLM, right? BLM. We have to, all of a sudden, no matter what color you are, if you are white, you're against black, right? Activism on the Antifa side. Basically, I want to tear down the entire mechanism. I don't really believe in anything, but I'm more aligned with the left. Activism has taken on a little bit of a weird terminology, and I want to hear what it means to you. And what the rest of us, because tonight, again, I always want to bring it back to this. Tonight is about solutions. It's not about complaining. It's not about whining. It's about saying, okay, this thing happened that none of us expected to happen, that we didn't believe was possible in our country, that this much, chicanery could happen while we all watched, right? So what can we do? There's 80 million of us out there that are going, now what the hell? Can't win an election. You've got the big Amazons and the big players there. You've got all of social media. You have all of traditional media. You have big business. You have now the government and that's controlling. What the hell are we supposed to do? So what does activism mean to you, Tamara?
So I want to address your very first point where people don't like you. My philosophy has always been that I am not for everybody, and I'm okay with that.
Not everybody's cup of tea, right?
And I'm okay with that. But they are missing out by not engaging with me in a discussion. So, it's their choice, but they're missing out is what I would say to that. Activism, here's an interesting component. If you look at one side, let's say conservatism versus the socialist Democrats, right? Or the Democrats who are completely going as far left as they possibly can go. When you look at conservatives in activism, we understand the power of we. When you look at the Democrats, they understand that their activism is all about the power of me. That is a massive, and I mean, it couldn't be farther. These two components of activism could not be farther apart on the rainbow spectrum, if you will, right? Okay.
Right.
Honestly, and it's dark and it's light. And then there's everything in between. And when you think about what do we want, right, as activists on the right, the real grassroots, authentic activists, we are looking to create opportunity for anyone who wants to dream it, believe it, and achieve it. That we believe that there are no limits to the amount of money you can make. There are no limits to the business that you want to create or run. There should be no limits on what your background, your economics, your upbringing, what country your family came from. The sky is the limit in the United States of America. Why do you think there are tens of thousands of people marching hundreds and hundreds of miles right now? 4,000 children are here in Texas, right? Supposedly unaccompanied minors, not sure how many are actually minors, trying to get in this border. So as the Democrat activists, as the socialist activists claim, we're such a terrible, horrible, no good nation. Well, that's odd to me, don't you think? And so What I look at and what I love is the fact that there is opportunity. We, as activists on the conservative side, we see opportunity. We see promise in each other. We see a big picture. What do Democrat activists? James said it really great. They're all about what they can find to be triggered about, right? They're about me. I want to get mine. What is in it for me? I am going to go out there and firebomb that building. I'm going to attack a police officer. I'm going to do something nasty, negative, divisive to someone in this country. And I'll summarize it and then stop because I want James and Seth to get in here. But a couple of years ago, I was working with David Horowitz. And I asked him a very serious question because I honestly wanted to know, what is the real inherent difference between the way Democrats are trained to think versus Republicans, right? Small r. And he said the fundamental difference is that if you are raised in a Democrat or far left home, you literally are trained to look in the mirror every day and say, today, I am going to do something to fundamentally transform this nation, to tear it apart, to remove a foundational pillar from this, systemically racist nation, right? That is the difference. And they will spend literally their entire lives never believing they're going to see it in their lifetime, but they still will do it and try to achieve those final ends. Republicans, conservatives, we wake up and we pay our taxes and we go to church and we're good moms and dads, or we try to be, and we try to do what we can to help our neighbors and be involved, but that's it. And one of the things in our training that Grassroots Gold is trying to do is, I tell everybody, that moment was an aha moment for me with David Horowitz. I wake up every single morning, I look at myself in the mirror and I'm like, you are awesome. You are radical. And today you're going to do something, Tamara Colbert, to promote liberty, to champion America and protect freedom, whatever it is. And I do that every single day. There is something that I do to now protect this nation. And what I want to try to achieve is that we want citizen activists from the conservative side to believe that absolutely their voices, their engagement is truly more powerful than any of the swamp forces right now congregated inside those barbed wire fences in Washington, D.C. It truly is up to us, and there are more of us than there are of them. So all we need to do is believe it and act like we believe it.
Tamara's bringing the heat.
Give me the pulpit, baby, and I'm going.
No,
Watch out.
Look, I love it. I love it because, at the end of the day, it comes down to choice, right? If you're a Democrat or you're listening to this, you might feel attacked this evening, or during the show. But at the end of the day, whether it's Republican or Democrat, what the point of the Bald Avenger show is to say that the answer is usually in the middle, right? The answer is usually from two conscious human beings being able to bring this conversation out and have a conversation and make something better. To Tamara's point, that this is a country that has built on its strengths, eliminated its weaknesses along the way. And we forget that. We think that because there was slaves and there was racism, back at the founding of the country, that has all of a sudden that's poured its way forward, which is an absolute lie. There's more slaves outside of this country than the entire time of the transatlantic slave. But they happen to be Asians, right? They happen to be Mexicans. They happen to be Guatemalans. They happen to be other races that are being they're being turned into slaves, both 10 million children being turned into slaves on the sex trade. And you have millions and millions of others because we need a new set of Nikes, or we've got to have a new cell phone. The cell phone that everybody complains about, systemic racism on, is being built by true slaves, right? So I love what you have to say. I love hearing the passion in your voice. We're going to get to some of the steps that you've taken, because that's what we're here to do. Is we want to learn, how do we become activists? What are if somebody's sitting at their kitchen table tonight going, I have a job, I have 2 kids, what can I do? Somebody that is single and they've got a business, what can I do? So Seth, talk to me a little bit about activism and play a little bit off of what Tamara had to say.
So I agree with a lot of her, her tenets on this. A little bit intimidated to come after it, but I think I'm gonna see the fork in the road and take a different approach. So I would agree with her on activism, that conservative activists are on point and they're sharp, and you can see the fruit of that in primaries. When you have a good primary candidate with a low turnout, especially depending, like this next year should be a good year for America First candidates, Patriot candidates, just based on political dynamics. And that will be something, just like when Obama's 8 years in the White House devastated the Democrats up and down the country in every chamber. I mean, we still have those chambers. I say we loosely, but the Republican Party still owns those chambers all over the place. So The problem is, I believe this country suffers from something called affluenza, very wealthy. So like even the poorest of the poor in America are wealthier than most of the people in the world. So something like 57% of the world's population lives on less than $2 a day. So our people are not really conscious of the damage that can be done in very short periods of time. And that's proven by that letter that went out this week by Evangelicals for Biden, where they came out, like a couple people came out, like highly decorated individuals with lots of credentials, complaining about how they can't believe what's being funded and what sort of abortions being promoted by this. And I'm sitting here, I'm like, look, I haven't been paying attention for that long. I mean, I've been a voter for, since, about 18 years ago, but come on, seriously, you didn't realize that this administration would promote the things they're promoting? Where have you buried your head in the sand? So a lot of people don't pay attention, which is why I think the silver lining of the Biden administration, God willing, it's going to be a short administration, a 4-year administration, but it may not be. But I will say that it's going to be a painful time for a lot of people. And if we do get into some of the questions that were posed on the chat earlier, you can see that already in some of these executive orders, because you're going to shift, activism is going to shift away from touchy-feely stuff to beans and bullets, like we call it in the Army, nuts and bolts. I mean, you're going to have these miners that are going to be so destitute. You're going to have people that are in all sorts of fossil fuels that are going to be so destitute out of a living that it's not going to care what social views anybody has. You're going to be able to completely revamp. The state of Texas is a good example. I mean, oil and gas is our lifeblood. So you're going to have a lot of people in some of these cities that work in these ivory towered oil and gas facilities that are moderate or touchy-feely on some of these issues, begin to relate, if we can present it properly, a working class party that actually conserves. So, conservatism doesn't do a very good job of conserving anything. And I think that's where you're correct about why would you want to identify as a conservative if you don't conserve anything. But I will say that the left does one thing very well. They mask that selfishness with complete command of language. And a lot of times our people, once you get past this level of sharp folks like Tamara, at the grassroots level, lots of people that just want to fight about fine points. They want to fight about white papers. And there's not a lot of unity on that. Now the left, they run around and they command language. You have BLM. Well, who could argue with the 3 words together, Black Lives Matter? Well, yeah, like they're created of the same God that me and you are. Or anyone else. So like, of course, we say all lives matter, gets thrown back in our face. Planned Parenthood. Well, of course, it's very wise of people to Planned Parenthood. We're going to bring a life into the world. We should plan it. Well, we don't talk about how the primary big time, not even close, like big time generator of revenue for Planned Parenthood is abortion. That's what they do. So we kind of get away from commanding the language, and we get a guy like Donald Trump in there who wants to fight these people. And he commands Zelensky's rules for radicals against them. And one of those principles is ridicule. So he would ridicule these folks. And a lot of people would lose that, and they'd say decorum, they'd say this is manners and tone.
Less than presidential.
Correct.
And it was a Trump beatdown every time he would do that. They lost their minds.
Because he would say that. He would make a cannonball in the deep end, and it would cause all the journalists and the blue checks to lose their mind. And then all of a sudden, people that are not that involved in politics are like, hey, immigration, build a wall? Seriously? Okay. And now, you see why he ridicules stuff to create a tidal wave of media coverage. So that's where I think activism is. I think you have a very strong front rank with aggressive chargers. I think the main body is extremely lacking. I think it's because we have a lot of distraction. I think we have a lot of select baseball leagues. We have a lot of barbecues. We don't want to lose our spot at the country club. The churches are getting very woke. You can see that, a lot of the churches are teaching doctrines that they want to claim they're against human trafficking. Well, we're against racism and employment. Well, I can't think of a better way to stop human trafficking or slow it substantially, stop the flow of drugs, and also to create economic opportunity for our own minority citizens than to enforce our immigration laws and keep people out. So, that's something that we're not articulating well. And a lot of churches get hung up on that. So, you've got people in our churches and in our institutions that aren't engaging in the civic discourse because we've done such a bad job of telling people not to talk about religion and politics. Well, now we're illiterate in religion and politics.
Right. Yeah.
I'm not on fire like Tamara is, but I'm close.
No, I love it. Again, that's kind of why I was excited about this show, is because you all have these positions that you've taken through critical thought, right? You're not programmed by anyone. That's what I know about all three of you. And Seth, our relationship goes back longer, to know you think for yourself, right? The show that we did was based on math, and it showed so many clear things. When math meets opinion, math wins every single time. So, but let's go to James and find out what does activism mean to you in this context of the conversation?
Activism means a heck of a lot different than what the left has embraced. That's for sure. I think earlier in the conversation, I just want to revert back and then I'll answer that question. As far as Antifa goes and Black Lives Matter, like Seth said, obviously, Black Lives Matter, everybody's life matters. The issue here is that in Antifa, like a group like that, they hold no loyalty to anybody. I don't think they align anymore with the left. I don't think they align anymore with the progressives. And I don't think they align anymore with the conservatives than any of the others, to be honest with you. I'll tell you who aligns with them though, and that is the left. And the issue here is that we have a two-party system in the United States, one of which is split, the conservative side, between people like us who want to do the right thing, who want America to succeed, and the sellouts who are, Republican in name only, that don't uphold their title, that go to Washington and just become yes men and yes women. They do whatever they do because they're told to, or because it's their turn, or because they fold under the pressure of being there and getting swallowed up into the machine or whatever. And that really bothers me. And then we have another party that literally embraces just an absolute anarchist style of just chaos, burning cities, tearing down businesses, destroying people's lives. And I'm sorry, I have a 16-month-old daughter. What we all should have in common, no matter who we supported in this last election, no matter what our political ideology is that, like, dating back to, pre-revolution, pre-document era in the United States, early American and early in the colonies, you only had 1% to 2% of the population that actually supported going to war with the greatest military power in the world in order to have their own independence. That means 98 to 99% of the rest of the population were willing to just get along to go along, or go along to get along. Okay. And nothing's changed. We talk about the 1%, and it usually gets talked about, and categorized with the ultra wealthy, but we're the 1% for America, not those corporations, not the politicians, not these other world leaders that are putting their claws into our, democracy. It's really a constitutional republic. Activism to me means nothing more. If somebody's sitting at their kitchen table watching this, if you're out there right now and you're watching this, or you're watching this on replay tomorrow or the next day or a week from now or a month from now, wondering, what in the heck am I going to do to play a part in this? How many times I had to answer that question between November 4th and January 20th and beyond that up until present day? It's daily.
Right.
In multiples. Not just one here, one there. What do I do? Blah, blah. And I'm telling you, here's what you can do. I had a conversation with a gentleman about a week and a half ago where he said, the Charlton Heston line, out of my cold, dead hands. Well, guess what? Guess what just happened today? They passed 2 bills through the House. HR 1446 and another one, I can't remember what the number was for that. We're not even talking HR 127, HR 1. Okay, but these passed through the House, and in there are steps to gun control, taking away your Second Amendment. He's like, nobody's going to take my guns. Okay, well, I got a question for you. And in all due respect, are you wearing a mask to protect yourself against a virus that has less than 0.3% as far as the death rate goes out of 100%? Are you wearing a mask because you're too afraid of how, Joe or Jill are going to look at you when you're in the grocery aisle? I'm going to tell you right now, if you're afraid of that, if you're afraid of how somebody's going to think about you because you're not wearing a mask, because you're not sick, if a mask is supposed to protect other people, if you're sick, it's going to keep you from getting sick. I'm not going to go off on a tangent here, but think about this for a second. If you're willing to wear a mask because of somebody judging you for not wearing a mask, I guarantee you, when the feds show up to your door, if it ever got that drastic and said, give us your guns, You're not going to stand down with the feds. You're going to give them your guns. Yeah. And that's a shame. That's what activism needs to be. You want to know what it needs to be. If you're sitting at your table, stand up for your rights. You have the First Amendment, the Second Amendment. You have all the amendments. They're there for a reason. They're to protect you from the government. It's not to protect the government from you. That's not how it was written. That's what Tamara said in the beginning, or Tamara, sorry. You know?
Do you think we're screaming into a breach though, brother? Because you and I, the four of us that are on this show, we get it. Do you think we're screaming into a breach?
No, I don't think that there is an abyss. I really, truly don't. And you can call me the eternal optimist. You can tell me that I'm Pollyanna. I don't believe that I am. I believe I'm a realist, okay? I told you in the beginning, give me a checklist, a pilot can do anything, okay? That's all we need. I'm telling you right now, it's 3 easy steps. The first step is the most important, what I believe, honestly, and this is just coming from me. I don't have a direct line to anybody, but maybe some of you guys do. I know Seth might, okay? But I think that a very certain popular individual with orange skin should be holding rallies every month. Yeah. Okay. And not as the president of the United States, but as the leader of the conservative and the patriot movement. The people in this country need to understand and still believe and be motivated to know that they matter. And if we can consolidate our base, and our base, like Tamara said, is much larger. Because all we're hearing, like you mentioned, the news networks, the news networks in the beginning, they are doing nothing but regurgitating fringe concepts of progressivism that have nothing to do with the fabric of this nation.
That's right.
At all.
You're totally right, 100%.
So, yeah. I mean, the activist side of me says, you know what? You're not sick. We're all adults. Don't wear a mask. You don't need to wear a mask. There is not a single law. A mandate is not a law. You want to be an activist? Let's start showing up to these places not wearing a mask. That's not a big deal. They can't arrest all of us.
Yo, James, I would agree with that. It's a bit problematic. I think the root of the mask thing is, if you drop those little trial balloons out there and you ask somebody, joke about this mask, hey, how's your mask working? You almost always get the eye roll. There's not a whole lot of people that are into that, but nobody wants to be the person to rock the boat. So nobody wants to take the first shot at Lexington. I'm not saying that literally. I'm saying nobody wants to be the one to go into the store without the mask on. Now I've been, my county is a 85% Republican stronghold. And I go to the grocery store and I'm maybe one of 2 people up until this week where the restrictions were eased, but I'm one of maybe 2 people not wearing a mask. And if it's like that in 85% red America, imagine how long that's going to persist in Dallas, or how long it's going to go on in Madison, Wisconsin. So I don't really know what's going to get people to start because there's no basis in health or science for.
Well, I'll tell you what there's an awful lot of people that regret their vote in November. I think it's 1 of 6. That's a lot of folks that regret voting for Joe Biden. Day one, he axed the Keystone Pipeline. There's 42,000 jobs in Wisconsin that were lost. That's a lot of jobs. I think it was 42,000. You correct me if I'm wrong. Maybe it's lower than that, but maybe it was 42,000 for the entire pipeline. But my point is, I have people in my family, okay, that voted for him, okay, that regret it because their propane gas bill nearly is tripled. Okay. And he's been in office for 5 weeks. I think that it's going to get, like you said, I think it's going to have to get really bad. Unfortunately, it's going to have to get bad. People are going to have to realize that, man, we made a big mistake. But, I don't believe that we made a mistake. I believe that it was a landslide in the other way. But
well, that's what I was going to say, James. Do you think that the computers that auto printed in Joe Biden votes, do you think that they have that they're regretting their vote?
Yes,
no,
they are.
I don't think that.
Yeah, they probably are too.
Yeah.
If a computer has a conscience, damn it, then they'll regret it right now. So talk to. I love that James, and I want to switch over. We have some things that I wanted to talk about, and then there were some things that were put up on the Facebook that I think would get us all thrown on a watch list if we asked them, that we won't talk about. But I want to stick on this because this is super positive. What you're seeing here is 4 different people who are going about this a different way, and a shorter answer on why isn't Trump leading us right now. And I'm going to start with you, Tamara. Why do you think he's not out front doing what James just said? Because I agree with him.
It's really interesting. I'm not really sure. Heaven help any of us who are trying to get into President Trump's head.
Right.
Let me just be the first to say that. I'm not going there.
Yeah,
no,
exactly.
I'm going to do my own thing. James, you actually brought up a really extraordinary point. And you know what? Somewhere instinctively, he's doing this as part of a greater strategy. I don't know what it is, but for him to be silent this long, I'm telling you, he might be silent, but I'm telling you, his brain is working. And I believe he's actually working on something that's gonna launch. I don't know, but my instinct, just watching him kind of being paying attention over everything for the last 4+ years, I think he's working on something, to be totally honest. And I think whatever he comes out with next, I think you're right. I think it's going to be explosive and it's going to be amazing. And I want to bring something up because both James and Seth are right on the money with their comments. I think personally, this is an opportunity with Trump being silent right now. It is an opportunity for not just all of us on this show, but anybody watching. Again, we have a republic if you can keep it. I just want to say, our founders didn't want us to believe that Donald Trump is the only way to save this country.
Right.
I was born for right now. Seth, you were born for right now. Jason, James, you guys, this is our time.
Yes.
So for whatever reason, here's the strategy. We just have to do something to get those 80 million people fired up. Because here's the thing. There is no way you can tell me that there were hundreds of 100-mile car rallies happening from Brooklyn to Boston to Yuma, Arizona. Holy cow, there was a 7,500 car rally in El Paso. Okay. I mean, what has happened, the Democrats absolutely desperate. And they saw it. They saw it for all 4 years, that the people saw something that they could gravitate to that was inspiring. Again, right? Leaders, we look to leaders to help encourage us to believe in ourselves. And I think Trump did that. Make America great again. He inspired each of us to believe that was possible. But he can't do everything. And we did see that he can't do everything. I mean, I prayed for that man like a crazy person, as much as I pray for my own family and children, because I have never in my life witnessed anybody under such a relentless assault from everywhere. And he got up every morning and socked it to the left, going, I'm not going to take that. Bring it. Give me your best shot, people. I'm right here. Come on. Let's go. Let's see what you got today. And it literally drove the left insane. So I look at it and go, I'm going outside today and I'm going to say, bring it. Hit me with your best shot, folks. Hit me with your best shot. Because we've got a great country. I was born for this time, and there is a way to defeat these folks because, and I'm telling you, if there's one thing, anybody watching, what you need to do is immediately after this, you need to find the nearest grassroots liberty organization. If you guys were campaigning for James, you better call him up, have him direct you to the Liberty organizations. It's time to get activated. It's time to get out of your chairs, because to be totally honest with you, the only way to save this country is for everyone to say, Liberty loves company, and I am going to do something today to be part of that solution, to be part of saving
Tamara, you got the audience. They're fired up.
I'm just saying
going,
right now.
Yeah, go, go, go. They're like, yeah,
anybody in Texas, go to grassrootsgold.com. Shameless plug. I'm telling you, I want all of you Texans. Come on, bring it.
Love it. Seth, what do you got to say, brother? Why, and Seth, you and I have had this conversation in private quite a few times. Is, you know, we're both leading from the positions that we can. And, you know, and again, we kind of got used to the fact that, okay, on this particular Patriot March, we've got Trump out front, right? And now he may not be there, right? So what is it that you believe is happening, and what should happen?
Occam's razor tells me that, you know, Trump's 74 years old, just got done being president for 4 years. Not only was he president for 4 years, he presided over 4 years of absolute hell against his family, with a virus pandemic, with this issue. I'm not saying there's nobody that's died of the virus. What I'm saying is the magnitude in which this was blown up was historic. You know, devastated the economy. We've got a record number of suicides, depression cases, something like 60% of adults under 30 have thought about committing suicide in the last year. So this is a mental health crisis that we brought out. But I think that, you know, some of this silence is probably recuperation and regeneration, strategizing, and also just the general public. You don't want to create 4 years of Trump fatigue, you know, if he's going to run for president. Which it sounds to me, based on his CPAC speech, that he's going to. And by the way, if you know, once we cycle through this question and come back, I have almost like a golden gun recipe for winning the presidency in 2024, which is I don't see a way it would be lost. This, of course,
don't detail that here. Make Trump pay you for that advice. I'm just saying, you want a golden gun. That's your golden goose egg, brother.
Look, listen to the capitalist.
I'm just saying.
Listen to the capitalist.
Trump can pony up. Trump can pony up.
So it's a bit and for any of the commenters in the YouTube videos that are negative Nancy's out there, yes, it's all asterisk hinging on state Republican parties tightening loopholes in elections so they don't get worked.
Yes,
I get that. But so I think another thing is true. I was not a pilot. I know James was. He may be able to relate to this. I briefed a lot of pilots, but we had a battalion commander when I was deployed in Afghanistan, a great guy. But for about 6 months out of the deployment, he made himself the pilot in command of every major mission. And that did not allow for any of these senior captains or majors to log time in command and get ready to become battalion commanders themselves. And after about 6 months of the tour, he finally loosened up his grip on the bat a little bit and let some more people plug in. So Trump also has to realize that there's a bench that's coming up that's got some stars on it. And one of them is Ron DeSantis, the governor of Florida.
Yes.
So people think that Greg Abbott for a while here in Texas had a path. I'm not sure what 2020 did on that, but, you know, he's another big name out there. Kristi Noem's a huge name. So I think that, you know, he may want to see what's going on in the playing field. And, you know, you don't have a great candidate in every state. You don't get a home run candidate everywhere you go, like a Ron DeSantis. You know, it's just like playing poker. Got to know when to hold them, know when to fold them. Sometimes you get a bad hand and you toss it, get somebody else. Sometimes you get a great hand, and then sometimes you get a pair of eights. And every now and again, you got to play with those eights, because the eights are not always bad, you know, depending on what else is going on. I think that there's going to be something that comes out of Trump before he announces a presidential run, which I think is going to happen. And I think that one of the biggest things that needs to happen is a unified voice, not necessarily an echo chamber like you have with Parler, but the media is, everybody knows they're phony. They joke about how phony they are, but if they tell a lie often enough and long enough, people begin to believe it to be true.
Right.
This is why you have people wearing a mask to celebrate 365 days of 15 days to stop the spread. So Trump's going away. Some of it's strategic, some of it's got something to come, and some of it's really a wait and see, I would say. I'm not going to say that there's a plan for everybody inside the steel structure to be arrested. That's not what I'm going to go for, like we saw in the comments section, right, James?
Yeah, right.
Yeah, no, I don't think that people are going to be arrested inside of the barbed wire fencing, although it is a bit ridiculous and it is anti-American. It's the complete opposite of what the Capitol stands for, but neither here nor there. It's fine.
Yeah.
We didn't have that much barbed wire in Taji, Iraq, where we were deployed north of Baghdad. So
you know, I lived through that. I was there. You know, for that last rally, I was there at the Capitol, and I watched. You know, it's like I was there the whole time. Had a great day, an amazing day. I was so inspired. You had blacks for Trump and Chinese for Trump and gays for Trump and what, like there was this unbelievable sense of community that was happening there. And, you know, and I was up at when things started to get a little bit rowdy up at the Capitol and all that kind of stuff. And I didn't go in the first time. The police opened the door for the people, right? And just high-fived them on their way in. It was and then there's 75 photographers on the inside of the hall as those people stormed the Capitol, right? And they're just walking through. You know, you had a grandma that was going, "Oh my gosh," they're taking selfies, you know. And then I went back and I watched what the networks were saying, and I had to go live that night. So my second biggest show that I ever did, I went live, and I'm like, whatever they're telling you, this is BS, right? And so I look at all of that. I feel what you guys are saying. I feel it in my soul. That we're waiting, right? We're waiting. We've stepped back a little bit. We're not fighting the battles online every single day, fighting with idiots and trying to convince people that we're not racist and all these other kind of things. And I think Seth, you just nailed it, where it's a little bit of rest, you know, and restoration, getting ready for that next fight. Now, how do you overcome the idea that there was voter fraud? Now, is that a local issue where we get the states to tighten up on those rules, or how do you guys see getting past? Because that's a big one. There's a lot of us that are like, you know what? And I've seen it from a lot of people that are patriots. They're just like, how do we win again? And I'll start with you, Seth.
First off, people at the lowest level are going to have to care about this. And there's a limited amount of people that are, like I said, just like the stores, people wearing the masks around the stores still. Nobody wants to be the one to rock the boat. So now people have successfully linked voter fraud. If you start talking about voter fraud, well, then obviously that means you want to deny minorities of the right to vote. So what are you, some kind of a racist, right?
Right.
So that's one of the angles that happens now. The states are going to have to take charge on this, and what we really need is we need one domino to fall. There's a ton of legal action going on. There's a lot of cases going on right now. There's a big one moving in Arizona right now, 2.1 million ballots in Maricopa County. If those are successfully audited, I've seen the numbers on Arizona. They're absolutely not possible. The way that they came out.
And Trump's been winning his court cases left and right.
Yeah, but the key fraud cases are being thrown out without even a single hearing. Even since our first interview, like I've come out with a number of of briefings. Like, so I think one way to engage on the other side is to lay the cards on the table and say, here's the facts. I'm not going to even give you an opinion. I'm not even going to say the word fraud. So, you know, and let people answer that. But I would say that it's an interesting study if you look at the Georgia Senate special from January the 5th. I hate to laugh about it because the consequences are serious consequences, where you have somebody like Raphael Warnock in the Senate now and John Ossoff, which is Georgia Beto, Tamara. But those guys, so Kelly Loeffler and David Perdue, if there were ever two people that deserved to lose their Senate seats, it was those two, because they knew what happened in Georgia. And by the way, it's a little bit of a truncation to say that machines were the only mechanism of suspicious voting numbers in the election. Absentee ballots were the silver bullet, because the machines, the areas where there's suspicious activity with machines, like up in Antrim County, Michigan, and some other places and other obvious counties, those were used to keep totals low, like from running away with it. You know, so you don't have Trump running off with 80-20 numbers in Democrat Siberia, you know. And then you come back into the inner city and you've got Georgia. It's basically like a pharmacist has to keep control of all those painkillers. They've got absentee ballots going everywhere. I mean, you've got people, they know they don't vote. Here's an absentee ballot from this guy. Here's a guy that owns property in the United States. He's not from here. Go ahead and challenge this. That's where the issues are. But Georgia, Loeffler and Perdue knew what happened in Atlanta, where it's just ballot after ballot after ballot. And like Trump's up by 7 points on election night. He's up by 300,000 votes in Georgia, which is standard plus some from what he won in 2016 as a political neophyte. And he gains 400,000 votes in Georgia as he's doing better with the black vote, which Georgia's 35% black vote. Okay. And you have these ballots coming out of DeKalb County for as long as they need them. You have ballots coming out of Fulton County as long as they need them. And he still only loses Georgia by 12,000 votes. So Loeffler and Perdue knew that. They knew that absentee ballots were flying around everywhere. And they also knew that Stacey Abrams had spent, forever registering people. And there were absentee ballots on request before the ink even dried on the general election. So they knew what was going on, and they chose not to get involved in it, and they died by that sword. And Kelly Loeffler also promised President Trump she would object to the Electoral College. And, not enough people have rubbed her nose in that, because, she lost that special, and the next day was the Electoral College certification plus the violence at the Capitol, which of course washed away her promise to do that. But she needs to be shamed for that. And basically drummed out of anything to do with the Republican Party. David Perdue, he was a little better about it, but they didn't want to get involved in even investigating what was going on in Georgia. And then guess what? They lost. And, I don't know, maybe they actually lost by a combination of absentee ballots or everywhere. But another thing is, it wouldn't surprise me if 200,000 Trump-based voters that don't care about Republicans but vote for Trump didn't show up either. Yeah. So they kind of did that to themselves. So I think that the lowest level is where we have to get involved in voter fraud. And I've got all the numbers about suspicious data. If they won, clearly, let's see the cards, because I can't think of a better way to dunk on America First people than to say, we actually beat you fair and square. Here's the cards. Right. Whenever I get us inside straight, I always drop them on the table, even if everybody else folds, because I want to brag and dunk on people.
It's a great point. It's a great point. How about you, Tamara? What, on that particular issue, and then I'm going to go to a closing question for all of you guys, but on that particular issue, what do you think about the people that have the frustration comes all the way? They're like, I want to fight. You guys are giving some great points on how to fight and what to do in the activist world. But ultimately, if they set up this wall of voter fraud that they won, and it was in everybody's face. And, again, all you have to do is go back and watch the episode with Seth and I, where he lays it out perfectly, right, in those numbers. What are you doing about it? And what do you say to those people that are just like, why play the game if it's rigged?
Well, I'm going to point to something right behind me, right here on my wall. That is the legislation that I helped get passed in 2017 here in Texas. And I look at it every single day. And my ultimate goal, this is why we kind of launched Grassroots Gold, is so that every American possible, if they are willing to get off their couch, and I don't even want to use the word sacrifice, because as an American, if you hold a passport, if you hold a birth certificate, you are an American citizen. It is your duty. And duty doesn't mean sacrifice per se. Duty means you are honored. You respect something enough to participate, to keep it and champion it. And I want every one of those 80 million Trump voters to experience what that is like, to work diligently, faithfully, excitedly, to do something that you've never done before that can make your state better. Ultimately, this legislation has a potential to make America better, right? Because this legislation is a way with Article 5 to bypass the federal government altogether. It's extraordinary what our founders put into our Constitution. And so there's three key things that I would say are the three key components to this whole activism picture, right? And they are motivation, engagement, and action. If you say that again, I'm going to motivation, engagement, and action. And you can't get engagement and action if you aren't self-motivated. And if you are a person, right, who is self-motivated, that means you're automatically a leader. And exactly what James said, That makes you in the 1%. Think about this. That puts you back 320 million people in the 1%. That's 3.2 million of us that are in that 1%. And trust me when I say those 3.2 million of us have a way that we can change the trajectory of this country. Imagine if we could get even 50% of the Trump voters to get active in their states. Seth mentioned it. We have a lot of legislation happening. Arizona, Texas, as a matter of fact, today, 2 major election integrity bills got pushed forward to committee. Next Thursday, anybody in Texas, I'm going to be in Austin with hundreds of grassroots 50%, which have never, ever been to the state capitol, so that they can provide testimony in committee as to why we must have voter integrity and protect our votes, which are our voices. So we have to you have to be motivated. Once you're motivated, you can get engaged. It's very easy. Start with this. I'm not joking. Start with this. Get connected to a Liberty group. I know I'm repeating this because it isn't rocket science, folks. This is the pathway the founders gave us. And once you're engaged, you want to be active. You want to be active. And so I love it. I'm on the shoulders of giants. How am I look, I'm a mom from North Texas. What have I ever, nobody's going to remember me in history books. Nobody's writing a story on me. I'm not going to be included anywhere. And I'm fine with that. And there's millions of Americans in 1776 that did the same thing. They did it 1 foot at a time. They made one difference where they were, never to be included in history books, ever. We'll never remember their names. But we have a country today because of what they did. So for me, I have 3 boys, one who's in the Air Force now and twins in high school. And I think about where I came from and where I'm going, and nobody's going to remember me, and I'm cool with that. But I'm going to do what I can right now today to protect this country and champion and save liberty for my posterity and my neighbors if they don't even realize it. And the 80 million of us that are out there, the Democrats are terrified of us. And when they're terrified of us, that makes us dangerous. And I want to be the most dangerous woman in America because I'm protecting and saving liberty. I'm good. I'm good.
Love it. I love it. I love it. James, it sucks to have to follow her, but what do you,
not kidding.
What do you say to those people that are disheartened, that feel like, they got cheated, and that level of cheating, if it happens again and again and again, why vote? What do you say?
Well, I mean, if you look back throughout history, we've been the underdog a lot of times. And, it's like what was just said. I mean, you could probably name, I would venture to guess, and maybe I shouldn't even throw percentages out there probably, but 95% of people that in this country that have even gotten a good education on American history could probably not, and myself included, I probably couldn't name 3 of the signers of the Declaration of Independence. I know John Hancock was one of them, because he's the biggest one right in the center of the page, but I don't really know. I mean, I could take a stab at it, some of the founders, but you talk about however many signatures there were on that document. It's like Tamara just said, the legacy, when I'm gone, I want my daughter to remember that I was willing to do something to help preserve her future. Because what I would say to the people out there that are feeling down and depressed, I'm in the same boat. Seth feels the same way. Tamara feels the same way. Jason, you feel the same way. There's like millions of us, 80 to 81 million people. It's like, I'm a diehard Yankees fan. I will tell you that I've only been to 2 places in my life that physically were moving because it was so loud. And that was the old Yankee Stadium. And that was Kenosha, Wisconsin at the airport when Donald Trump walked out to God bless the USA. It was literally physically moving. Nobody's going to convince me that he didn't win. But what I will say is we've all gone through the same stages of grief Okay. And we have to face the reality of this is our fight now. We can't give up. What I would say is, it's like, you know, Seth and I were joking around, or we were in a group chat, and he started quoting Winston Churchill, you know, we'll fight him in the sky, or however it went, fight him in the ocean, fight him on the land, fight him in the streets, never give up, you know, never, ever, ever give up. I mean, that's how you stay motivated. I mean, it doesn't matter what 500 and some odd folks in Washington, D.C. have to say about 81 or even 320 million people in this country. This is our country. And what it comes down to is just so simple, even though we're in uncharted territory right now. You know, founders set it up like that on purpose. We have state legislatures and local governments as our last line of defense. What we need to do is we need to make sure, like Tamara said, we need to motivate. It made me clap. I mean, I agree with you. I wanted to cheer when you were talking. I'm sure just like everybody else out there watching you. But I'm telling you right now, we have no choice but to stay motivated. I know it's like, it sounds so cliche to throw quotes out there. Ronald Reagan, right? We're the last great beacon of hope on the planet. You know, we're one generation away from losing our freedom. And if this has gone like General Flynn mentioned a couple months ago, where are you going to go? Where do we go from here? So just from that concept right there, you know, we can't give up. That's got to be our motivation.
Stand up.
I gotta say right now, with 81 million of us, you are totally spot on. Think about this, 81 million of us.
Yeah.
If
81 million people.
Force, man.
And I'm gonna say, it's like Donald Trump. This isn't about Donald Trump. This isn't about Seth. This isn't about James. This isn't about Tamara. This isn't about Jason. This isn't about Joe or Judy out there. Whoever's watching, this isn't about you. It's a collective whole. Okay. There's nowhere to go. We can joke about Mars, and I would rather, I'm staying on Earth, okay? We need to fix our own place right here. We need to start it in the home. This doesn't work, trickle down. This is from the bottom up. We're the foundation, okay? We're the ones carrying them on our backs, not the other way around. They don't have the right to tell us what to do, okay? They're not the ones that are going to work 8, 9, 10, 12 hours a day, coming home exhausted, okay, to a mom or a dad that are taking care of the family all day long and wondering how next month is going to go. Because I'm sorry, at the end of the day, we're the only thing that is standing in the way of total tyranny coming from Washington, D.C. And if we don't stand up and stay motivated and primary and step up for city council, for county council, county boards, school boards, you know, state assemblies, state senate, state legislatures, the House, whatever it's called in your state. You know what? If you've got the poll and you're a patriot, there's a great guy here in Wisconsin that's going to run for governor. Okay. Fantastic. Patriot guy. One of us. Okay. We have to get collectively behind and so strongly behind these candidates. And if it's one of us, so be it. I tried it in Sheboygan. You should have seen the smoke and the dirt that they threw at me, okay? And it's not even worth repeating. It was so ridiculous. Everything from I dye my hair gray. Let me tell you something. I earned every one of these, okay? Just like you earned your bald head, okay? Like I'm telling you right now, you know, okay? This is real, okay? Number one. Number two is like, you know, just absolutely abhorrent to try to fundamentally change the greatest country the world has ever known. And that should be our motivation. That should be our motivation.
It should be our motivation. You're right. And, you know, Edna sort of sums it up out in the audience. She says, our founders didn't know what to do, but they knew whatever they did, but they did whatever it took. So it's up to us to work at it and ask those that lead. Right. So 100%. I love that as a encapsulation. What I want to do is I want to start with Seth, go to Tamara, and then back to you, James. And before I give the closing question, I want you to say anything that we didn't talk about tonight that you think is important. And I'll start with you, Seth. What did we not cover that you think is important for the people to know?
Well, before I answer your question, I'm gonna be like those guys in the debate, and I'm gonna claim my 30 seconds or whatever.
On the previous question.
It's tacked on to James. I think that quotes, we mentioned, you know, all these little quotes and stuff like that. Well, they exist for a reason, you know, because they remind people of something that was in front of them. that was conquered. So Winston Churchill's quote is actually one of the great quotes of all time. Now, when I hit it on that group thread, I was just being stupid. It was funny, and I sent it one line at a time, you know, to add for the drama. But this was, I mean, they're literally like being bombed, like strafed, like in London by the German Air Force. Things were not good. I mean, they were getting their clocks cleaned in Europe before we got involved. And Churchill said this, he said, "We shall defend our island, whatever the cost may be. We shall fight on the beaches. We shall fight on the landing grounds. We shall fight in the fields and in the streets. We shall fight in the hills. We shall never surrender." So, you know, it sounds, you know, like a bunch of bravado, but it's not, because they were part of the winning team.
And they did it. They did it. They answered the call of the patriots of their time for their country. They answered that call.
Well, correct, but it wasn't night. It wasn't good when this was happening. I mean, it was basically like night was.
They were losing.
Right. So this is not a good thing, but I mean, it's, you know, what has happened to our system. I mean, you've got elections that should be clean, but if they're not clean, the legislatures can fix those. Well, and then if the legislatures won't do that, the courts can fix them too. But they didn't do it. So we're pretty much like taking on water at this point, where the fact is, it is we the people. So Donald Trump, in my opinion, you know, the reason he made the right enemies was because he was onto something. He was doing good things. But if freedom hinged on we only have freedom if this particular person's president, well, we're not really free. So we still have our great quotes today. So General Flynn has a great quote that's out there, and it's impossible to defeat an enemy that you don't admit exists. So if we don't name these enemies of liberty for what they are, a lot of them are actually communists. And being willing to call them that's one thing. So that's what I wanted to caveat off of James. Now, stuff that we didn't talk about, it's really, you know, it's easy to gloss over things with three people with a lot of different perspective. Well, four, when we talk about all of the guests that you've had on and all the experience, I feel like we did a pretty good job. I think we could honestly do one where it's all Q&A at some point.
Yeah.
I really think that we did a pretty good job given the hour and a half we had. To jump into things. So I don't really think we have.
Okay. Great. Tamara?
Well,
anything burning on your soul that we missed?
You know, it's really, here's Seth talking about great lines in history. We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, do ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States of America. It says it all right here. And you know what? They are going to have to come and wrench this country from my cold, dead fingers, because I don't care. I'm going to the gulag, that's fine, but I will never, ever stop fighting. I will never surrender my liberty, and I will never, ever give up on the promise that is the United States of America, and what this little 4,000 word document guarantees each one of us, that truly was a divine appointment that God ordained and wrote on in our DNA, a liberty gene. It is why men and women the world over for thousands of years will do anything. They are literally willing to do anything to be free. And we have
unconsciously, everybody strives to be free, don't they, Tamara?
Yes,
even if it's unconscious, they strive to be free. That's
absolutely
crazy. I love that. Awesome. James, what did we miss?
Oh, I think we could talk for a straight week. You know, I do. Just to build off of what you and Tamara were just saying, early on, after Seth and I literally had just met. And by I say that, we were developing a professional relationship at the time, obviously through just text and phone calls. And he said, I said something like we were just talking about. He said, well, the guy that laid in front of the tank in Tiananmen Square was free because he wanted to be. Because he wanted to be.
Yeah.
And I think that was a really powerful, and that stood out in my head. You know, there's certain things that are said in your life that you remember, and that you'll remember at random. Go ahead.
I was just putting my name at the end of your quote.
Oh, yeah, he's good at that too. So no, I don't think we missed a whole lot for what we were covering tonight. It's just, to keep driving the point home. And I know maybe it's beating a dead horse, but it's a dead horse that's worthwhile to keep beating, is that we have to stay engaged. We have to self-educate. Unfortunately, we have to be the ones to very carefully and with a very fine tooth comb, because there's a lot of disinformation out there from a lot of different avenues. But to self-educate and to, the Constitution's only 4 pages long. Read it. It'll take you a half hour if you want to read it a couple times. But it's important. It's important that we teach our children correctly, because the public education system, which is funded by our tax dollars, the money that we're going out and earning, with our blood, sweat, and tears for our family that we're paying into, is funding education systems that isn't quite teaching our children and our teenagers what would be the correct things that they should be teaching. And I think if there was one point, is that we need to do a better job of educating our kids, our younger generations, so that by the time they graduate high school, the people that they're surrounded by being taught in school, by the time they show up as a freshman in college, they're not primed to become good little socialists when they graduate and they turn the tassel to the other side of their, graduating cap. And it's just a false sense of reality that we're creating in these kids. Our kids, they need to be in school and around other children. I think that what we need to do is what we, as parents, and it starts in the home. And I guess the only other point that I would say, just to kind of close it out from my personal faith standpoint, I believe Jesus is my savior. I believe in Christian values. And I also know that there's never been a time in our nation where more people have been on their knees in repentance and praying for this country and for their families and for themselves, and crying out to God to save us. And if you tend to lean in that direction, I would like to remind you of this one thing in closing, for me at least, and that is, in the Bible, God told Abraham, or Lot, I think, that if one person would cry out to God, then God would spare the city. God would spare that land. I'm of the opinion that there are millions of us crying out to God right now and begging for his help and his guidance. And so I do not believe that this is it. I believe that there is a light at the end of this tunnel. There is a line at the end of the battlefield, and I believe we're going to cross it. It's a great scene in The Patriot where Mel Gibson picks up Old Glory with the 13 stars and charges up to that structure that's been destroyed and waves that flag to rally the troops not to retreat. I think that we're at that moment in time right now, in a very American and peaceful way, that we can take back our country and allow ourselves to become the voice again. Because at the end of the day, that's what is important. So I'll close with that before you frame your question to end this thing.
I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. I think there's been so much value that's been added to the viewers tonight. And that's what I was expecting. That's what I was hoping for. And so many different perspectives on what's happening in our country. But I think the unifying message is that you've got to do something, right? And this is what I want to close with for you guys. Just go round robin. I'll start with Seth. We'll go Tamara, and then you, James, and then I'll finish up. But how can the people that are watching this, that'll watch this on replay, that'll hear this on iTunes and all the things, how can they support you in what you're doing if they're so inclined? Because there's 4 different massively different personalities on this show, and somebody's going to attach with one of them. And I want to know, I want them to understand how that they can reach out to you, how they can become part of your tribe, what you're working on. Everybody here is part of Misfit Nation, which kind of identifies us, I think, right now very well in the world. But Seth, I'll start with you. What can people do to follow you, and your last piece of advice for those of them that associate themselves to your personality?
Well, sometimes I've been told I'm an acquired taste, so I'm not sure how, as far as attaching to my personality, some people say I've got too much energy, but if you do attach to my personality, you can find me on Twitter. General Flynn blessed me with quite a Twitter following. And that would be at S Keshel, which you can stick that in the comments. If you want to get in touch with me on a more personal note to make sure that I see it, if it's something actionable, then you're more than welcome to email me. It's skeshel@gmail.com. So you can just send me an email. I kind of text like a 13-year-old girl, so I'll get back to you pretty quick. So yeah, I'm still figuring out where I'm going to factor long-term, in terms of stuff like this. My rate of connections picked up quite a bit. I've got some ideas in mind it's too early to pop them out, but they may very well fall into place here in the next year or so.
Well, you have an army, you have me on your side. If there's ever a call to action that you need anything, there's an army of patriots in Misfit Nation that are willing and ready, willing, and able to do whatever we need to do to work for this country and to get back our country.
Well, that's awesome, because we need to do more segments. James and I have actually been talking about a podcast called Captains America, which may be a bit of a a very humorous, maybe every other day kind of blurb outlook on things. Humor is a very good tool to be able to get across a lot of dividing lines. My advice to other people is, the famous question is, how do you eat an elephant? I think you've heard that one, right, Jason? What's the answer?
One bite at a time. Yep.
So not everybody needs to run for mayor. Not everybody needs to be a councilman. Not everybody needs to, run for president. But there's a lot of people, when you read comment sections, like, what do we do? What do we do? It's over. Our rights are gone. It's like, your rights are gone if you give them away. You actually have no obligation to give away your rights. Now, it may cost you everything, but you don't have to give them away. So you can't really, they have that thing. It's like, if you didn't vote, you can't complain, which I generally agree with that. But if you're not willing to even talk to your neighbor or a normal person about anything, there are so many benign conversations that you can start politically without saying Democrat or Republican or anything. Like, you can have a conversation about, we're all sitting here expected to wear masks. You can have a conversation about that because Democrats own businesses, Republicans own businesses. Democrat and Republican parents send their kids to schools where I've got a 5-year-old kid that gets out of my truck every day when I drop him off at school, who's wearing a mask. They don't ever wear a mask during flu season. So why don't you talk about this kind of stuff? So really, if you're not willing to have these discussions, even the pretty benign conversations, then you're not going to factor much into the bigger fight. But you need the worker bees and the army ants to do stuff too. And that's really the heart of what grassroots activism is, which is what Tamara does so well. So really find any way to get plugged in and get involved. It just so happens I've got a lot of connections and the ability to sit here and blather for an hour. And if you ask me something that I don't understand, I'll make something up that makes me sound like I do. So, then I'll drag people in like James, so James can tell all his bad Seth stories in public. But everybody's got a role. It depends on what your talent is. It's the same way when people ask me if you should be an officer or if you should be enlisted if you go in the military. It's easy. Do you like to plan and do you like to speak in front of people and present stuff? Then be an officer. Do you like to do stuff and work with your hands and deal with a couple people at a time? Then enlist. So figure out where your track is and what you do well and jump to it.
I love it. I love it. Yeah. Plus there was a lot of votes that I saw here when you put out that Q&A show that we got. So we'll be putting together a Q&A show for everybody here very soon. So same question to you, Miss Tamara.
Well, I first of all I was remiss in not saying thank you to James, because anybody that runs for office, you are put through the ringer. You are scrutinized. You have to share everything. And if you don't, somebody else is pretty much going to share that, right? Either negative or positive. So be like James. Be willing to stand up right in your community to do something. If, like Seth said, that's what you believe you can do. You can run for dog catcher. You can run for school superintendent or city council or whatever, or mayor, like what James did. And you're better off for it. And, sometimes people mistake, what does it mean to win? Well, James may have just lost the election, but he actually won something bigger. And that is that he put his foot forward. He put his whole self in, to his whole skin in the American game, right there in his community, to say, I'm going to stand up for all of you. I want to represent you. I want to be your voice. And that is actually extraordinary. It's extraordinary that we get an opportunity. Shameless plug for the Constitution. It seems silly, these 4,000 words. What James did, he actually took this, and there's his roadmap for activism right there. And so I would just say, if anybody wants to reach out to me, I am on Twitter as well, at Tamara Colbert, and still can't get my Parler functioning. So Twitter for now. And my email address is tcolbert@grassrootsgold.com. And you can always go to our Grassroots Gold Facebook page as well and post anything. I do a Facebook Live every Thursday at 5:30 Central Time. But again, I'm just going to say it is so not about me. But if I can encourage you and give ideas and share with you on what you can do or help someone find that gift that they've been given, because we all have gifts. I think the key is that we all need to use our gifts as fruits of the Spirit, because we are known by those fruits. So are we going to be the happy warrior moving forward, being willing to stand up like James, Seth, putting himself out there with the skills God gave him with data and analytics? We have to be willing to do that. And are we going to be known by those fruits, or are we going to be known by those negative fruits that are also there in Galatians 5, right? And we can do this. We so can do this, but we can't do it alone. We have to unite and work together. And I'm excited because I think that our best days are ahead, and I'm looking forward to that.
And before we jump ship, I want to back up what she just said. And I should have mentioned this earlier, because there were tons of people who were not involved on November the 3rd, 4th, 5th, that over the months and weeks, they did become involved. Jen, I'm not sure if you're listening to this, but so Jen is from Pennsylvania. She's a pharmacist up there. And I remember having some conversations with her about, what her level of willingness to jump in this fight, and that could involve some ramifications professionally, if she were to become too exposed, because she got in there with a lot of well-known legislators in PA. And she was somebody that I personally was like, hey, this is your moment in the sun. Like, you have information. Like, are you just going to sit on it? Like, what if your information is the information that flips Pennsylvania 20 electoral votes back over? Now, it didn't turn out that way, but she never regretted doing that. We had a number of people step forward. I mean, we had lawyers, and lawyers are people that are really like not good for them to get well known and over leveraged, like politically. We had lawyers offering their services for free. We had people that carry around guns for a living, trying to give free protective services to people. We had pastors like writing in to say that they're praying for people. We had scientists providing data. I mean, mathematical scientists, all kinds of people coming out of the woodworks to help the cause. So everybody finds a way to contribute their skills if they want to, and if they volunteer. And of course, we also had people who wanted to come forward, and they would only talk to Donald Trump if we can get in front of Donald Trump. It's like, hey, I don't know about you, but I don't think the president of the United States is sitting there, playing one of those little ping pong paddles either. Yeah. So there's a lot of people that were involved, a lot of people that were willing to get their hands dirty, and some of them even took risks to do that.
Yeah.
Affidavit.
Love that. James, take us home, baby, and then I'll wrap it up.
And all I have to say is that when we do this Q&A podcast next, I do not want to go after Tamara. Okay. Again, you're having me wrap it up.
She sets a high bar, baby. She sets a high bar.
Now, this has been really, really great. I'm honored to have even been a part of this, to be honest with you. And I appreciate all your kind words that you did say when you were saying all that about the race. It was a great experience. I knew what to expect only because, managing campaigns and seeing how dirty even the local level it can be. And it's the most personal, actually, of any of the races that you'll ever run in if you do get involved and run for an office. But I'll tell you right now, I mean, we had a really good turnout for, and I haven't lived here very long. I've only lived here for a couple of years nearly. And And we got 1,000 votes out of 4,200, and we only lost to the second place, who's the incumbent, by I think 250 votes. So here's the thing: it's not about me. It's not about any one individual. Like I keep trying to hammer, and like everybody here is hammered. It's about collectively, us as a whole, getting together and realizing where we can fit in. This Friday, I'll give you another example of how you can get involved. There's a anti-sex trafficking, anti-child trafficking group up here in the Sheboygan, Wisconsin area, and up to Green Bay and all the way down to Milwaukee. Milwaukee, believe it or not, is actually considered the pimp of Harvard's, or the Harvard of pimps, if you can believe that, which is disgusting in my opinion. And I, only having a daughter only strengthened my position on this. But, I'm meeting with this group on Friday night of this week. We were supposed to meet last Friday. Kind of schedules got crossed, but I'll tell you right now, I'm trying to keep people updated as far as where that is standing. If you don't want to get involved in politics, you can get involved in your church. You can get involved in your schools, your kids' schools. You can get involved in PTA. You can get involved in kids' sports. You can be a coach. You can influence the kids. That's our next generation. Those children that are growing up now are going to be the leaders of the future because of what we're doing in the present. What we do right now is going to dictate literally and provide what they have in their futures. So if we just sit back and we're downtrodden and we're sad and this and that, and our guy, didn't win or whatever, we don't have that opportunity. We don't have that luxury to sit back and do nothing, because we have our kids to think about. This isn't about us. This is about our children. This is about our future. And I'm sorry for continuously beating that horse, but get involved. Find a group like some of these you mentioned it in the beginning, Jason. 10 million kids. There's a lot of kids that go missing every day. And what I found out, and not to go off on a tangent about this, but sometimes it's even worse than you think it is, because these kids are living normal lives during the week, Monday through Friday, where first off, they're being recruited out of public schools and high schools, okay, to do these things on the weekends. And they're telling their parents out of fear, because their parents have been threatened behind their backs to the kids, that you're going to go to your friend's house this week for, a sleepover. And that's what their parents think is actually going on. And then their kids are right back to school Monday through Friday like nothing's wrong. Yep. Okay. We got a serious issue in this country. All right. And I was called a conspiracy theorist up here for believing in this. I can tell you right now that I have met with a lot of folks. I think that we have a bigger voice now that we lost this mayor race, to be honest with you, in this community. I believe that's capital. It's not even political capital. It's human capital that we have to take into this fight. We have to not be afraid to get dirty in this fight. And I'll tell you right now, it's the last thing I'm going to say. If we lay down at this moment, then when we're on our deathbeds, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 years from now, or however long it is, and you look at your kids, or I look at my kid, I don't want to think, man, I could have, or I should have. I'm going to think about, you know what? I did everything that I possibly could in the capacity that I could do it to affect a change, great or small, no matter what it is, to make my child or my grandchild's life better, or their kids better, just like our ancestors did that came to this country and forged that path forward. Okay? There have been countless moments in this country where people have been afraid. This is no different. You can't lose hope. You can't lose faith. You can't lose your courage in times of adversity. And I know that sounds really corny, but it's the truth. And when you go to sleep tonight, thank God for your freedom. And tomorrow morning, wake up. It's a new day. You have a new opportunity, 24 hours to go out and do something great. So that's how I'm going to end it. Again, thank you. And I appreciate meeting you, Tamara, and you, Jason. And I look forward to moving forward. I know, Seth, you already know I like you. You're a great guy. So anyway. Appreciate it all.
Jason, before you know what James is going to hear as soon as we get off this call?
What's he going to hear?
Because I just figured out what he just pirated his closing line from, like Mr. Joe Biden right here.
Yeah.
And dying in your beds many years from now.
I don't listen to anything that man says, because he doesn't know what he expressed. So I couldn't have possibly
Your deathbed. I got it. Braveheart.
Your deathbed. Braveheart. Got it. Well, look, there was a couple of things that I wanted to get out of this show. And one of them, you know, that you got in spades was the idea that you're not alone. There was something confusing that happened. There was a loss that supposedly happened. There's, you know, all of these things, and 80 million people went, what the hell? Right. And this, the meaning behind the reason why I wanted to do this show with these amazing people was so that you know you are not alone. You're not alone. Number two, the second thing I wanted you to get from this is that you don't wait around and be told specifically what to do to guard our liberty and your own freedom. Just do something. Right. And those were the things I wanted you to get. And then what I'll leave with, just with this fantastic panel, you know, on my idea of what you can do. Obviously join Misfit Nation. That's a group of you that are here. I know a lot of you that are commenting tonight. Misfit Nation, we come together, a bunch of screw ups. We've screwed something up in our life. We have somebody to forgive because they harmed us. We have ourselves to forgive. And then we have that pain to use as power, and in serving other people. And what I will tell you is that what wasn't addressed this evening is one of the greatest ways that you can participate in freedom and liberty is for you to take your small business or your medium-sized business, start a small business, do something economically, because the one of the first steps, one of the first things that's taken away in a society that takes away capitalism and is on its way to communism is your independent access to capital. Okay. Your independent access to capital is called a small business in this country, and anybody can go start one right now. I don't care what color you are. I don't care what your sexual preference is. I don't care if you're a Democrat or Republican. You can go start a business right now and start building an ethical capitalist company. That's what built the middle class in this country. If you go back to the days of Henry Ford, if you go back and what built our libraries was the billionaires of the day being ethical capitalists and giving back to their communities and lifting up their communities and paying their people more so that they could afford the very things that were necessary so they could buy the cars that they were building, for crying out loud. That's what built the middle class. Our middle class has been ripped and shredded apart as part of this social. It's like the silent socialism that's creeping into our community to be able to rip that away. And you have people like Bezos, who I think is an unethical as hell capitalist. You got $90 billion, brother. How about split that in half? Why don't you do something in the communities that you're out there saying that you support? Why don't you do something with that? What I believe is that we need to start doing business locally. You need to start finding small businesses. You need to support small tech startups. You need yourself to learn the strategies and the techniques of how to build a business for yourself. Because if we lose that tenet, that independent access to capital, we're done. We're done. No matter what we fight, we're done. And it's going to be down to blood and bullets, and we're going to have to fight the hard way. Gaining financial strength in your own life is a massive weapon to having a voice and to having influence. Okay. I wanted to add that piece in sort of as another tool for all of us to have. Those of you that know, you know, and I want to go to what James said is a conspiracy theory. You guys know me that have been following this community. You know the doors we crashed. You know the little girls that were pulling out of the sex slavery, the little boys that were pulling out of it, the actual work that's being done. It is not a conspiracy theory. It is an epidemic in our country because people are convincing you that it's a conspiracy. There is not if we can shame people out of smoking cigarettes, you should be able to shame them out of having sex with an underage child, right? And I believe that fight is one that's worthy of having. It's in direct line with the fight that we're talking about tonight. The Constitution, it gives life, liberty, and the you know the thing, right? How you like I worked in my Biden one, and our ability to be able to have freedom. And if the very least among us doesn't have that right, then we are failing as a nation to stand up for those that need us to. There's 3 or 4 victims that are actually victims, and all of them have one thing in common. They had choice ripped out of their life. They don't have the choice of where they're going to go. They don't have the choice of feeding themselves. They don't have the choice. Domestic violence, trafficking, starvation. There's choice that's been ripped out. Everybody else that thinks you're a victim, get over yourself. right? Get over yourself. You're not broken. And the pain that you've gone through is a call for you. It was a place where God made you strong, where you can't be broken, where other people are weak in that spot for you to serve, for you to step up, for you to step forward. As all three of these amazing people have said, do something, for crying out loud. And that's what I'm going to leave you guys with tonight. I just want to say thank you, James. Thank you, Tamara. Thank you, Seth, for being back here again, for the idea to put together this amazing panel. I am overjoyed with what was delivered to the people, the calls to action, the examples that all three of you set with your lives, not with your words, but with your lives, where your feet go, right? Where your feet go is what you're actually doing in this world. And we don't have to listen to you, John, all day. We just watch what you do. And your inspirations, you're somebody that everybody should follow and that everybody should aspire to be more like. So thank you guys all very much for being here. Don't forget to tune in, to share this show, to look for it out there. We're going to get it all boxed up and do whatever my team does with it and send it all over the world. But I love you, Misfit Nation. I cannot tell you, especially over the last 6 months, how much you've meant to me and how amazing you guys are doing, the difference you're making out there in the world. The rescues that you funded, the people that you fed through Feed a Billion, and on the domestic violence side. I love you all very much. We're family for a reason. For tonight, Bald Avenger out. Peace.